That massive Bitcoin crash, you know? The one that stunned everyone and turned the markets upside down just a few days ago. Well, that was actually one of those moments where a contradiction Bitcoin has carried since its very inception. The dream of a stateless currency met its most painful reality. Think about it. Once upon a time, it was supposed to free us from banks, from governments, from that endless printing of money. It was meant to dismantle the system that drowns the poor in inflation while the rich swim in liquidity. But history has taught us time and again, freedom never comes free. Because when you remove the rules, the referees, and the regulators, what's left isn't paradise. It's chaos disguised as opportunity. And that recent crash was just the latest example of this chaos staring us in the face. As a financial historian, I love to tell stories about how money, power, and history intertwine. And believe me, few stories are as complex and contradictory as Bitcoin's. To understand the path to this latest crash, we need to go back to 2008, the year it all began. To that horrific crisis where trust hit rock bottom and the financial system imploded. The fall of Lehman Brothers screamed a truth to the whole world. This system was a sham, built on leverage and illusion. Those in charge had neither control nor accountability. Central banks printed trillions to bail out the very institutions that caused the disaster, while billions of people lost their homes, jobs, and savings. It was proof that the system wasn't built on stability, but on blind faith. Right in the midst of that global meltdown, the user named Satoshi Nakamoto published a 9-page paper on an obscure mailing list for computer scientists. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, this wasn't just a technological innovation. It was a political manifesto. It envisioned a currency without a state. Transactions verified by cryptography, not bankers. A supply forever capped at 21 million coins. No central authority, no inflation, no manipulation. Everything would be open, transparent, and incorruptible. Every transaction would be recorded on a public ledger, the blockchain, which could never be rewritten. It was the perfect answer to the sins of 2008, a monetary rebellion wrapped in math. In 2009, the first block, the Genesis block, was mined. Inside it, Satoshi left not just a timestamp, but a message. The Times 3 Jan 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was an open defiance of the system. Mining in Bitcoin isn't digging in the ground. It's solving complex mathematical puzzles. Each time a miner's computer cracks one of these puzzles, it adds a new block of transactions to the blockchain and earns new Bitcoins as a reward. The network stays alive through thousands of machines competing, verifying, and securing every transaction. Without a central authority, no government, no bank, just math. In the beginning, Bitcoin was the dream of a handful of idealists, libertarians, and programmers. Coins valued at pennies were traded on small online forums. You know the famous story of Laszlo Hanyecz buying 2 pizzas for 10,000 BTC at today's prices. That's the most expensive meal in history. But unfortunately, that dream of stateless money soon clashed with human nature. By 2013, Bitcoin's price had skyrocketed from under $1 to over $1,000. That's when the speculators poured in. Exchanges like Mt. Gox became billion-dollar markets overnight. And then, as always, the dream cracked. In 2014, Mt. Gox collapsed after 850,000 bitcoins, worth $450 million at the time, mysteriously vanished. What was called digital gold had simply evaporated. There was no one to call, no regulator to intervene, no refunds, no recourse. The blockchain publicly recorded every stolen coin, but not a single one could be retrieved. The technology worked perfectly. It was the people who failed. This is the paradox of Bitcoin. It removes the middlemen, but also the mediators. There's no authority to turn to when something goes wrong. Every transaction is final, every mistake permanent. And in recent years, as the entire crypto world exploded, so did the scams. Fake wallets, Ponzi tokens, phishing links, rug pulls. Most of them tried to capitalize on Bitcoin's reputation, but were built on much shakier ground. In 2022 alone, users across the crypto industry lost over $3.8 billion to hacks and scams. Even if you can trace the stolen funds, and you can, thanks to blockchain transparency, recovering them is nearly impossible. The addresses are visible, the owners are not. Cold storage solutions like hardware wallets are safer, yes, but not foolproof. They protect against hacks, not against fraud. If you willingly send coins to a scammer, your hardware wallet can't save you. This is the trade-off Bitcoin imposes: freedom or protection. You can't have both. Bitcoin promised liberation from centralized control, and it delivered on that, but it also stripped away all the safety nets that ordinary investors rely on. No chargebacks, no customer service, no oops button. The money is yours, but every mistake that comes with it is also yours. Yet people kept believing, because Bitcoin wasn't just money, it was an ideology, a protest against the old order. And in that difference lies the whole story of stateless money. Freedom without boundaries doesn't stay free for long. El Salvador became the first country to turn this Bitcoin dream into law. This small Central American nation, long dependent on US dollars and remittances, declared Bitcoin legal tender. Its young president, Nayib Bukele, called it a revolution. The world called him reckless, but he called it freedom. At first, it looked like a triumph. The government launched a national wallet app called Chivo, gave $30 in Bitcoin to every citizen who downloaded it, and installed Bitcoin ATMs across the country. The area around El Zonte, dubbed Bitcoin Beach, became a symbol of financial innovation. But the experiment quickly hit the wall of reality. Most Salvadorans didn't want a volatile asset for their groceries. They wanted stability. In 2022, when Bitcoin's price plummeted by over 60%, the government's holdings lost half their value on paper. Protests erupted. Citizens complained about technical glitches, scams, and frozen wallets. The IMF warned that adopting Bitcoin could destabilize the country's finances and cut off loans by 2025. The results are mixed but instructive. El Salvador officially holds around 6,240 Bitcoins, worth roughly $740 million at today's prices. The government proudly displays this figure, but the reality is more nuanced. According to surveys, only about 8% of Salvadorans regularly use Bitcoin. The rest stick to dollars. Under a new IMF agreement, the Bukele government quietly agreed to make Bitcoin acceptance voluntary rather than mandatory. The law remains, but the enthusiasm has cooled. International creditors imposed restrictions on further Bitcoin purchases. The Bitcoin beach economy survives, mostly fueled by tourism, but everyday citizens are wary. For them, Bitcoin didn't bring freedom. It brought confusion. Their salaries are still paid in dollars, their debts denominated in dollars, their savings in cash. Bitcoin, for now, is a sideshow. The El Salvador experiment showed us that Bitcoin cannot replace the financial system, because it's not a system, it's a technology. It works beautifully for those with knowledge and discipline. But as a national currency, it exposes the very thing it tried to fix. The wealthy and tech-savvy found new ways to move money offshore, while the poor were told to download an app that barely worked. What El Salvador discovered was that even a stateless currency still needs a state to enforce trust. Without governance, adoption breaks down into chaos, and chaos has a cost. While El Salvador's real-world experiments played out, online, a new class of digital elites was quietly shaping Bitcoin's destiny, not governments. But whales are the largest holders of Bitcoin, wallets containing thousands or even tens of thousands of coins. In 2025, roughly 1% of all Bitcoin addresses control over half of the total supply. This means a handful of individuals or institutions can influence the price of an asset that markets call decentralized. When a whale moves just 10,000 BTC, around $600 million at current prices. It's enough to crash or spike markets across the globe. Some of these wallets belong to exchanges, others to anonymous entities. None are accountable. In traditional finance, this kind of influence would raise alarms. Regulators monitor insider trading and market manipulation. But in Bitcoin, there are no such rules. No reporting requirements, no disclosure standards, no punishments. If a whale dumps coins on one exchange to trigger panic, then buys back cheaper on another, it's just strategy. Even more common is the insider game. Exchange employees knowing which coins will be listed next and front-running the market. Developers leaking information about updates. Private groups coordinating pump-and-dump cycles through encrypted chats. In regulated markets, this would be criminal conspiracy. In crypto, it's just a regular Tuesday. This is the contradiction at the heart of Bitcoin's story. It was built to remove human corruption, but humans built everything around it. And those humans learned to bend the rules because there weren't any. Bitcoin cannot be manipulated by governments, but it can be and is manipulated by people with enough capital to move the needle. That's not decentralization. That's just a new oligarchy with better technology. In the stock market, we fear insider trading because it destroys fairness. In Bitcoin, we call it early adoption. The result is the same. Power concentrates, and those who arrive late pay the price. By 2025, Bitcoin's code remains pure, but its market isn't, and that distinction matters greatly, because when there are no referees, every player becomes their own regulator, judge, and victim. And then there was that big crash. What we experienced the other day was the explosion of these contradictions. This lawlessness, this accumulated energy of centralized power by whales and large institutions, a sudden selling pressure triggered by an event, a lack of liquidity, and of course, fear. When all these came together, those allegedly decentralized markets reacted even more violently than the most centralized traditional markets. Billions of dollars were wiped out in an instant. So who will be held accountable? Who will cover the losses? The answer? No one. Because the essence of the system is this: don't trust, verify. The responsibility for your money is entirely yours. Whether it's stolen, manipulated, or its value halves overnight, you are the sole responsible party. By 2025, Bitcoin has become both myth and mirror. A myth of digital freedom and a mirror reflecting every flaw of human greed. After years of volatility, its price has surged again, reigniting the crypto fever that once gripped the world. Exchanges hum with activity. Politicians tweet laser eyes. And the old chorus is back. This time, it's different. But history never changes. It only disguises itself. When Donald Trump returned to the White House he promised that America would be the crypto capital of the world. He called regulation a form of socialism, and signed executive orders rolling back the digital asset rules introduced under the previous administration. The White House even launched NFTs to fund political projects, blurring the line between governance and graft. Crypto markets exploded in response. Billions poured into new projects overnight. Some were legitimate innovations. Others were fraud in designer clothing. It was the same old story: freedom, marketed as opportunity, speculation sold as revolution. Because in the absence of regulation, lawlessness always masquerades as liberty. This is the paradox Bitcoin has never escaped. It was created to free money from control, and it succeeded. But what came next wasn't a world of equality. It was a world of absolute responsibility, where every investor is their own bank, every mistake is permanent, and every loss is final. In traditional finance, there are regulators, courts, deposit insurance, and laws against manipulation. If your bank fails, the government can intervene. If an executive trades on insider information, they can go to prison. If someone steals your money, there's at least a chance of recovery. In Bitcoin, there's none of that. The blockchain records truth, not justice. It's perfect transparency with zero accountability. You can see where your stolen coins went, trace them to the scammer's wallet, watch them move through mixers and exchanges, and still have no way to get them back. The ledger is honest, but the world around it isn't. And that's what makes Bitcoin so haunting. It's not that the technology is broken, it's that human nature doesn't run on code. The crypto community often responds with a simple defense: don't trust, verify, store your coins in cold wallets, use hardware ledgers, control your keys, not your exchange. And they're right. If you have the knowledge, discipline, and resources, you can protect yourself. But that's not financial freedom for everyone, that's financial survival for the few. The average user doesn't want to manage private keys or memorize seed phrases. They want safety, not sovereignty. And that's where the entire dream begins to fracture, because freedom without protection doesn't liberate the masses, it isolates them. Meanwhile, the divide between Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto space has never been clearer. Bitcoin remains the most decentralized, secure network in history, but it's surrounded by projects that mimic its language without sharing its integrity. As Bitcoin rose, a new generation of coins appeared, thousands of them each, promising faster transactions. New blockchains, decentralized finance, metaverses, NFTs. The movement became a frenzy. The word crypto was born, and with it, confusion. Thousands of coins promise riches or revolution. Most vanish within a year. And when they fail, the damage always spills onto Bitcoin's reputation. Because to the average person, it's all one and the same, a blur of scams, hype, and volatility. But they're not the same. Bitcoin was built as digital gold, scarce, incorruptible. The rest of crypto built a casino around it. And, as in any casino, the house always wins. Yet the problem isn't just the scams or the greed. It's the system itself, or rather, the lack of one. In 2025, global regulators still can't agree on how to treat digital assets. Some countries ban them, others tax them, others simply ignore them. There's no international standard for exchange transparency or consumer protection, and without a referee. The whales, the invisible few who control the most, keep playing both sides. This is what makes Bitcoin such a fascinating paradox. It removed the gatekeepers, but didn't remove power. It only changed its form. In place of central banks, we now have central holders. In place of policymakers, influencers. In place of oversight, algorithms. It's still hierarchy, just rebranded as decentralization. The truth is, Bitcoin did something extraordinary. It proved that money could exist without a state. It showed that trust could be built on mathematics, not institutions. It was the first successful rebellion against financial monopoly, and it worked. But every rebellion faces the same test. What happens after you win? Freedom without structure decays into chaos. And chaos eventually demands new rulers. Bitcoin has outlived its critics, its bubbles, its crashes, and its imitators. But its greatest challenge isn't technological, it's moral. Can a currency survive without laws? Can a global market exist without accountability? Can freedom sustain itself when everyone's incentive is self? The answer is still unfolding. Bitcoin doesn't need governments to survive, but societies still need laws to function. Without them, financial power just migrates from parliaments to protocols, from bankers to whales, from regulation to code. Perhaps Bitcoin's true legacy isn't financial at all. It's philosophical. It forces us to ask what money really isn't, whether we can ever separate it from power. Because even in a stateless world, power doesn't disappear. It just finds a new address. Bitcoin fulfilled its promise to create money beyond the state, but in doing so, it revealed a deeper truth. When you remove the regulators, the powerful don't vanish. They just change wallets. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. And I'll show you where to look. And remember, that last crash wasn't just a price drop. It was an echo of a crack in Bitcoin's very soul.